Welcome to the DQS New Auditor Onboarding Training. This is the last part of the training and probably the one you're most interested in, and that is some tips on doing audits in the DQS style. First of all, it's important to note that it is our policy to present audit results and the report to the customer at the end of the audit. So before you leave the site, you're going to leave them with a recommendation and with a report. Prior to the audit, they're going to receive the agenda, and then again at the completion, the report. They do not receive the mandate calculator, but it's something that's part of your audit package that you will complete. And there's something called trail notes that we're going to talk about. Documentation preparation, that is how to prepare the agenda and report, is covered in the Regional Audit Manager training video, also available on this site. I highly recommend that you watch that. The agenda is prepared out of the RAN Regional Audit Manager tool, again, in a separate training video. A few things I'm going to say about the agenda. Audit days are 8 hours in length. That does not count lunch, and it counts from opening and closing meeting. On-site report preparation time may not exceed 10% of the audit time. We send the agenda to the clients 4 to 6 weeks prior to the audit. If you are the lead, you have to copy everybody, auditors, trainees, observers, in addition to the client, and help them with travel logistics. And the lead at the planning stage should confirm dress code, special requirements, for example, things like steel-toed shoes. Some more things that the agendas must include: scope of registration, audit criteria. All of these things come from 17021. And when you use the RAM tool, the tool pre-populates many of these things or guides you through questions that will help answer these. In the last section, we talked a little bit about scope writing. And I talked you through what's the difference between a site, somewhere where manufacturing processes occur, and a remote location, an address that supports a site but does not do manufacturing. Every program has its own requirements for the wording of scopes. Our procedure, Q0907-30, provides guidance and direction on scope writing. It was one of the procedures called out in Section 5 of this orientation. How we word our scopes is critical. The procedure, Q907-30, we generally word scopes as the manufacture of something, the design and manufacture of something, the provision of service for something. Your audit package, before you go to visit a customer, contains the current certificate. As part of your planning, and then again when you arrive on site, you should confirm that the scope is current and accurate. If the customer is requesting changes at either of those stages, you have to consider whether you have the qualifications necessary to encompass them. What do I mean by that? So if the customer is just trying to change the wording of the scope, or they're just trying to change their address or something like that that affects the certificate, you can do that within the bounds of you're not adding new scope to the registration. If you are qualified as an assessor and the customer wants to add new scope, for example, a new product that they have not manufactured previously, to their certificate, and you are not qualified as a lead, then you cannot perform that change. You would need to contact customer service, explain what's going on, and a lead would have to be scheduled. We talked about headcount during the part where we went through the mandate calculator. If you get it on site and you find the headcount has increased since you confirmed it during the planning stage, you have to do a few things. First, you have to determine the impact. So you have the calculator, you put the new headcount in, you see if anything changed. If the head days go up, now you have to determine, can you extend the audit to cover them, or can we come back to visit them if the audit cannot be extended? Regardless of what is determined, you need to let your BLM and customer service know immediately, because these changes affect the PO, and our scheduling and dynamics. Now let's say you get there and you find the headcount has decreased. This happens a lot during downsizing periods. Again, first step is to determine the impact of the difference on the man-day calculations. From there, we attempt to reach an agreement on what to do. One thing you could do is focus on the areas that were impacted by the losses of personnel. Frequently, they will have quality system problems if resources have become a problem due to downsizing. If the client insists on reducing the number of days, you need to let the BLM and CS know. Again, in both cases, your primary course of action, after you've confirmed the impact, if there is an impact, is to let the BLM and CS know. Another thing you're going to do when you show up on site is determine how they're using our certification body mark and accreditation logos. You might say, well, I don't understand how am I supposed to know how the mark should be used? Well, they have signed a contract with us called an L44, and in Section 5 of it, it holds them to only using the mark in certain situations, and guidance on this is provided on the DQS website. So this is not the intranet site we talked about before, but the actual site that our clients can see. That's where the guidance is all posted. Some of it is listed in here. Well, let's just go through the main things. In general, the use of the mark on promotional or advertising material shall not be in conflict or in no way create a misleading impression as to the nature of the certification status. So, for example, if their scope included the manufacture of computers, but they also manufactured television sets, and they were somehow using the mark on a brochure that listed both, that might be misleading to think that the scope included television sets. The mark cannot be used on product. That's a major one. They can't put it on product. And there are some limitations on packaging. So it can't be used on individual packaging, right here, but it can be used on bulk packaging. What we don't want to have done is some sort of misleading attempt to say that UL or DQS, because we still allow the use of the UL mark, is certifying the product or service itself. We are certifying the management system that it is built under, but not the actual product. I know we're skipping around a little bit, but that's the nature of this. We're going to talk a little bit about documenting the assessment. I mentioned notes in one of the last onboarding presentations. Trail notes are required to be submitted. Format's up to you. We have a process turtle that's CF 158. We have a notes page that's CF 154. You can use either. Your note should make reference to the job you're working on by the BR number. Some programs have special note-taking requirements, like AS and TS might have special note-taking requirements. There's something called lead notes, and there's what we're just discussing, which is trail notes. Trail notes are the documentation of your audit, so you'd show sample size, procedures you looked at, things like that, people you talked to. Lead notes are notes you want to give to the next assessor to follow up on something or look closely at something, or maybe recommendations for a hotel or something like that. Neither set of notes is left with the client. A little bit about nonconformances and OFIs. Actually, there's going to be a lot of it about this. When you identify something as a nonconformance, you identify it to the customer immediately when it is found, before you leave the area, and at the end of the day. And again, at the closing meeting, frequently we'll go through all of the nonconformances and OFIs. Usually we'll ask the customer if they want to do that, because they've heard them by now a few times. We do this multiple times, so we do not surprise the client. We don't wait to the end and then tell them what their score is. Non-conformances are sometimes referred to as action requests or ARs. You're going to hear that a lot. We want them to understand what the findings are and what the nature of the findings are. So majors, minors, or just OFIs. So what's a minor? It's a non-compliance that, in the judgment and or experience, indicates that it's not likely to result in a failure of the quality system, reduce its ability to ensure control processes, result in a probable shipment of non-conforming product. So here's a little example. Objective evidence shows that 2 of 15, and I list the sample, caliper 123 and micrometer 234, measurement instruments sampled were passed due for calibrations as required by process Pro-Cal-01. So in this we say what our sample was, what was actually wrong, and what requirement was being violated and where it was documented. So that's an example of a minor nonconformance. A major nonconformance is the absence or total breakdown of a system to meet the applicable standard requirement. Again, a number of minors in one area can lead to a major, or it could be an individual major. Any noncompliance that would result in the probable shipment of nonconforming product. So it doesn't say the shipment, it says the probable shipment. A condition that may result in the failure or materially reduce the usability of the products or services for their intended purpose. A noncompliance in the judgment and experience indicate is likely either to result in the failure of the quality system or materially reduce its ability to assure control processes and products. So, if you find a situation where nonconforming material has been shipped, you have a major. It's not only probable, it did happen. So here we have our example. Objective evidence shows that nonconforming product was shipped as final inspection results for part XYZ-123 on August 9th, 10th, and 11th, 3 of 20 sampled, showed the part failed inspection, but was not dispositioned as nonconforming and was shipped to the customer. So that is an example of a major nonconformance. OFIs are opportunities for improvements. They're observations that could lead to a nonconformance, but you do not yet have a nonconformance. You have to be careful when you're giving out OFIs. We do not want to consult. We do not want to say things like, "Oh, your quality system could be better if you did this." They're purely observations on something that could lead to nonconformance. I would tend to err on the side of conservatism and not offer many OFIs because it gets close to the line of consulting. Formatting of action requests or nonconformances. They have to be clear and concise statements. They have to stand on their own. They need to be understood by the client. They need to include a statement of the nonconformity. They need to include a reference to the requirement, and they should note the objective evidence. So here in our example, our statement of nonconformity, these instruments were passed due for calibration. Our sample size, or our documented requirement, is Pro-Cal-01, and our sample size is shown. Remember, you or somebody like you is going to have to go back on subsequent audits and verify that the nonconformances were resolved. The more you can put in the nonconformance, the better it is for that next auditor, who may be you a year later when you've forgotten what you writ and why. You may be helping yourself to focus on what was important and what the actual issue was. We number each AR with your initials and then a sequential number followed by the standard reference. So DP-1 for the first AR written by DP / against 7152, a calibration requirement. For minor nonconformances, written responses from the client, including containment, root cause, and corrective action plan, are required to be submitted to the lead within 30 days. This is for QM. Some programs, like AS, require less time or have different requirements. So if you're doing something that's program specific, you need to look to that program to see what their requirements are. The client can dispute any action request if he feels it is incorrect or unfair. If the auditor and client can't agree, the client can contact regional management, that's your BLM. Management will review both sides and notify the client of the results. That process is in Q0905, paragraph 16.4. That is a very important procedure for any candidate auditor. The client can also appeal the outcome of the audit. So let's say you wrote a major and you want to either suspend them or withdraw. Usually we go to suspension first. The client may feel the major is not valid. The client should first be directed to the BLM, who will attempt to address the situation. If they cannot agree, there's a whole appeals process that is led by the president of DQS, Brad McGuire. The company will have to formally submit their request on company letterhead, and then the appeals process will be initiated. I won't get into it here. You should read Q0905, paragraph 15. It describes everything in a very succinct manner that needs to be done to appeal the outcome of an audit. As a candidate auditor, you are considered a trainee in the eyes of the customer. We have to ask if you can come along and do an observation or a training event. Some clients do not want them. As far as accreditation witnesses, they are not optional for the client. So if an accrediting body like ANAB wants to witness an audit, part of our contract says that they have the right to do that, and the customer has agreed to that by signing the contract. Generally, when we're doing an audit, we want the organization to provide us a host or a guide who will take us through the different areas. The host or the guide should help facilitate the introductions, but not interfere with the interviews of the auditees. Sometimes you'll have consultants come along. That is fine. Consultants can be part of the assessment. They should not be answering questions. They shouldn't be disruptive or leading you one way or another. So I would say in most cases you're never going to have a problem with a consultant. If you do, you need to pull the management rep aside and tell them your concerns, because they should not be impacting the effectiveness of your audit. Shift auditing. We now audit across all shifts for most programs. So if you're doing an ISO 9001 2015 assessment, you're going to do all shifts if they have, let's say, 2 or 3 shifts. There are some exceptions. ISO 14000 doesn't require it. And there are some justifications for not auditing all shifts. For example, if they have rotating personnel, you're basically covering the personnel on different shifts. After the audit is done, you need to submit your documentation. So you've left a copy of the report with the customer. You go home, you need to get into Audit Center, and within 5 business days, upload the completed audit package into Audit Center. Part 1 of our verification process, done by the VG group, will be to make sure all the documents are in there. You are responsible, when you're a qualified auditor, for completing the action request analysis. While you will get some reminder emails, it is your responsibility to make sure this gets done and uploaded. Part 2 of the verification is to ensure the expenses have been submitted, and only when all documents have been uploaded will it move on to review. We already discussed this. The lead auditor is responsible for ensuring clients submit their AR responses and completing the ARA on time. If you have no travel expenses, you need to indicate that in Audit Center. All expenses must be submitted through Audit Center. And we talked about that in the expense policies part of this onboarding. We're almost done. Last step in our process is technical review. You are making a recommendation when you are at an audit, either a surveillance audit or a registration. You are recommending something. The final determination regarding the certificate is made by the technical review department. So they're going to look at what you did, the action request you wrote, the clauses you covered, and either agree with your recommendation or not agree with it. If there are cases where they do not agree, they will contact you and ask you for more information. You should attend to those with top priority. In many cases, certificates are being held up from generation because we're waiting for auditors to respond to issues that happened on the audit. So we're at the end here. You've covered all 7 sections. If you've watched all the videos, please send an email to Sebastian Quigg verifying that you've watched all the videos. And in that way, we will fill out a QF 1800-26 Auditor Orientation Training Record. Before we let you go, 2 more charts. We do have an Auditor Lead Referral Program. So, if you have some clients you want to send our way, there is a reward or an award for those clients. It's outlined here. This is the amount that you can receive. And this is the process that it goes through. So there's a form that gets filled out, and then it gets mailed to that address. The lead is logged. You're notified if we get the contract. If won, when audits are performed and the client is invoiced, you will receive something in the first year of invoicing. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and welcome you to the DQS team.